How dare you play these games with my son? Are you out of your mind, trying to ruin his career? A middle-aged woman jumped up and slapped the young woman fiercely across the face. You just wanted to trap a federal attorney for a husband. You thought you could marry into wealth and secure a meal ticket for the rest of your life. Carter's younger sister, sitting right next to her, sneered in mockery. A loud smack had echoed through the room, leaving a burning red handprint on the young woman's cheek. Carter just sat there, his head bowed, saying absolutely nothing. In that moment, Emily felt her entire world collapse. The man who claimed to love her could not even protect her, and his mother treated her like a cheap gold digger. Holding back her tears, Emily stood up and walked out of the restaurant alone. Before we start today's story, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. It gives us great strength in producing these videos. If you let us know where you are watching from in the comments, we will gladly and gratefully greet you. Now, let us begin the story. 3 days earlier, Emily was standing inside a clinic restroom in downtown Boston, staring intently at the test results in her hand. She was definitely pregnant. Her hands trembled. She was terrified, but at the same time, a part of her was overjoyed. She and Carter had always had a wonderful relationship. They had met in college, naturally started dating, and had been together for 3 years now. Having a baby felt like the natural next step. Emily walked out of the restroom and immediately called Carter. Carter, I am at the clinic right now. We need to talk. Over the phone, Carter's voice sounded bright. Yeah, what is going on? Are you sick? No, I am not sick. Let us meet up. I will tell you in person. Emily set up the meeting with a trembling voice. That evening, the two met at an upscale coffee house they frequented in Cambridge. Carter greeted Emily with his usual bright smile. What is going on? You look so serious. Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking carefully. Carter, I am pregnant. Instantly, Carter's expression froze. What? Really? Are you sure? Yes. I got it confirmed at the clinic today. Carter looked panicked, scratching the back of his head, unable to speak for a long time. Then, he asked cautiously, Okay, so does this mean we are getting married? Emily nodded. Yes, I want to have this baby, and I want to marry you. Carter let out a deep sigh. All right, but how am I supposed to tell my mom? At that moment, Emily's heart sank. Carter's mother, Barbara. Emily had never met her, but from Carter's stories alone, she knew the woman was incredibly demanding and elitist. Especially since Carter had recently been appointed as an assistant United States attorney, Barbara's arrogance had skyrocketed. Carter spoke carefully. Let us wait just a little bit. My mom has been very sensitive lately. We are having a family dinner soon, so I will gently bring it up then. Emily felt anxious but had no choice but to nod. Okay. But Carter, are you really okay with this? Marrying me? Carter squeezed Emily's hand tightly. Of course. Do not worry. I will explain everything smoothly. However, his eyes were wavering. The truth was, Carter knew his mother had already set up a blind date for him with a prominent surgeon's daughter. Once her son became a federal prosecutor, Barbara bragged to everyone in their wealthy social circle. She would constantly say that since her Carter was a federal attorney, she had every right to handpick a woman from a prominent family for him. Carter had actually gone on that blind date. He only went because he could not handle his mother's nagging. He had told Emily that his mother forced him out the door, and he just gave a polite greeting and left, but in reality, he had sat at that table for quite a long time. A few days later, Emily broke the news of her pregnancy to her father. Sitting across from him on the living room sofa, she brought it up carefully. Dad, the truth is, I am pregnant. Her father, Robert Vance, looked surprised for a brief moment but soon asked gently, Is it that boy Carter? Does he plan to marry you? Yes. Carter said he wants to get married. I am going to formally meet his family and introduce myself next week. Robert nodded. Understood. I will come with you. Emily shook her head. No, Dad, not yet. Carter just got appointed as a federal prosecutor. If he finds out what your actual position is, he might feel completely intimidated. Robert offered a gentle smile. My daughter is always so considerate. All right. We will do it your way. However, deep within his eyes, a firm and solid resolve had taken root. The day of the dinner with the future in-laws finally arrived. Emily wore a neat, elegant dress, took a deep breath while looking in the mirror, and whispered to herself that everything would be fine. In the car, Carter looked tense the entire ride. Emily, let us just stick to introductions today. I will read the room and bring up the pregnancy later. Got it? Emily nodded, but in her heart, her mind was already made up. She had to tell them everything today, the pregnancy and the marriage. The car soon pulled up in front of an exclusive, high-end steakhouse in Beacon Hill. With a trembling heart, Emily followed Carter into the private dining room. There, she came face to face with Barbara for the first time. Barbara was draped in designer silk, sitting at the head of the table. As soon as she saw Emily, she looked her up and down before speaking coldly. So, you are Carter's girlfriend? Yes. Hello. My name is Emily. Emily greeted her politely, but Barbara's expression remained stony. Ashley, Carter's younger sister sitting nearby, stared at Emily with the exact same disdainful look. Carter? What does she even do? Ashley asked. Carter answered on her behalf. She is prepping for the LSATs. Instantly, Barbara's eyes turned icy. Prepping for the LSATs. So she is still just a student. Yes, I am studying very hard and applying to law schools, Emily replied. Barbara scoffed loudly. Our Carter is already a federal prosecutor. The dinner began in a freezing atmosphere. Emily nervously put food into her mouth, but she could not taste a single thing. Barbara relentlessly pressured her. I hear a lot of kids these days say they want to go to law school. Do they all actually make it? Ashley chimed in. Right. I heard daughters of top surgeons and hedge fund managers are lining up to date federal prosecutors. Emily bit her lip and endured it. True to his evasive nature, Carter said absolutely nothing and avoided eye contact. Then, Barbara asked directly, What do your parents do? Emily hesitated for a moment before answering. My father works. Where? He works in the legal field. At the federal courthouse. Barbara nodded, completely uninterested. Hearing the legal field, she merely assumed he was some low-level administrative clerk. And finally, Emily opened her mouth to speak her truth. Actually, I have something to tell you all. Everyone's eyes focused on Emily. She spoke with a trembling voice. I am pregnant. Carter and I want to take responsibility and get married. In a split second, the dining table turned to ice. Barbara's face contorted violently. What? Pregnant? Her voice was laced with pure fury and contempt. Ashley hurriedly interrupted. Are you serious? Are you sure it is my brother's baby? Emily nodded. Yes. I confirmed it at the clinic. Barbara slammed her hand on the table and stood up. What kind of stunt is this? Are you trying to trap Carter now that his career is taking off? Startled, Emily shook her head. No, we truly love each other. But Barbara refused to listen. Love? Do not make me laugh. You got pregnant on purpose to secure a meal ticket. Waiters walking past the private room glanced over. Emily's face burned with humiliation, but she held it together and spoke. We sincerely want to get married. Barbara let out a mocking laugh. Take responsibility? With what money? You do not even have a real job. You are unemployed. Ashley piled on. Exactly. You expect my brother to raise a kid on a government salary while supporting you? Emily bit her lip. She looked at Carter, but he just kept his head down and remained entirely silent. Barbara looked Emily up and down with disgust. Do you know how busy I am these days? Now that Carter is a prosecutor, prominent families are lining up. Do you know how many corporate executives want to introduce him to their daughters? Emily's heart sank. Lining up? Barbara answered with arrogant pride. Of course. My son is a federal attorney. He has his pick of women from our social circle. Ashley added one more remark. Excuse me, but what exactly does your father do? Is he a lawyer? Emily shook her head. No, he works at the courthouse. Barbara scoffed again. A court employee. Just a basic government clerk. Emily could not retort. She wanted to scream that her father was a judge, but she held back, worried it would overwhelm Carter. Barbara continued to back her into a corner. If you ask me, you got pregnant on purpose. You were terrified you were going to lose your meal ticket. That is not true. Shut up. I know exactly how devious girls like you can be. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Just then, Carter carefully opened his mouth. Mom, please calm down. Emily is not like that. Barbara glared fiercely at her son. You need to wake up. Do you have any idea how prestigious your position is? And you are going to let a girl like this drag you down? Carter snapped his mouth shut. He was entirely crushed by his mother's overbearing presence. Barbara turned back to Emily. I will make this crystal clear. There is absolutely no way you are marrying Carter. You will terminate this pregnancy and walk away from him forever. Shocked, Emily jumped to her feet. Terminate my pregnancy? I will never do that. Barbara spoke with ruthless coldness. What do you mean you will never do that? A girl like you and our family? Do not make me laugh. Emily spoke with a shaking voice. I am going to law school, Barbara sneered, planning to. But right now, you are just looking for a handout. Emily could not hold it in any longer. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked at Carter, but he still had his head firmly bowed. In that moment, Emily finally realized the truth. Carter had absolutely no intention of protecting her. Barbara delivered the final blow. I am telling you one last time. There will be no wedding. Take care of this situation and walk away cleanly. Wiping her tears, Emily replied. I'm going to have this baby. Barbara's eyes turned lethal. Fine. Then brace yourself. I will not let this slide. The dinner ended in an absolute nightmare. As Emily walked out of the restaurant, she asked Carter one last time. Carter, what do you think about all this? Carter hesitated for a long time before speaking. Emily, just wait a little bit. Just until my mom cools down. Emily let out a hollow laugh. And how long am I supposed to wait? Carter could not answer. Emily stared at his face for a long while before turning her back on him. Fine. I will have this baby on my own. Emily drove home alone. The tears would not stop falling in the car. As soon as she opened her front door, she collapsed onto the entryway floor and wept endlessly. Just then, her father, Robert, came out of the living room. Emily, why are you home so late? The moment he saw his daughter's face, he froze. Her eyes were completely swollen, and tear streaks stained her cheeks. Robert quietly approached and wrapped his arms around his daughter's shoulders. What happened? Emily buried her face in her father's chest and poured out her tears. Patting her back, Robert asked quietly, What did his family say to you? Sobbing, Emily answered, They called me a gold digger. They said I got knocked up on purpose to trap a federal prosecutor. Robert's eyes grew frighteningly cold. However, his voice remained gentle. And what did you say to them? I told them I am keeping the baby. I told them I would raise it alone. Robert nodded. You did well. I respect your decision. Emily looked up at her father. Dad, if I had told them what your actual title is, would things have been different? Robert offered a bittersweet smile. That does not matter. What matters is how those people treated you when they thought they held all the power. Emily cried again. Stroking her hair, Robert spoke softly. Emily, I held back because you asked me to, but I will not let this go any further. His voice was quiet, but it carried an unshakable, terrifying resolve. 2 days later, Emily had to face her future in-laws once again. Barbara had reached out first. We need to have a proper conversation. Come to my penthouse. Her voice on the phone was cold and uncompromising. Emily felt anxious but could not refuse. Carter had offered to come along, but Barbara had cut him off immediately. Carter is not coming. I am speaking with that girl alone. Emily headed to Barbara's luxury penthouse in the city alone. Riding the elevator up to the top floor, her heart pounded against her ribs. She rang the doorbell, and Barbara opened the door. Come in. In the living room, William, the father-in-law, and Ashley were already seated. Emily greeted them, but no one acknowledged her. Barbara pointed to a sofa. Sit. Emily sat down cautiously. Barbara cut straight to the chase. This is a non-disclosure and settlement agreement. Or, since there is no marriage yet, should I call it a payoff? Barbara pushed a single document in front of Emily. Emily looked down at the paper, and her face went completely pale. It stipulates that you will terminate the pregnancy and cut all contact with Carter. In exchange, you get a check for $50,000. Emily shook her head violently. I do not need your money. Barbara scoffed. Then what do you need? A federal attorney for a husband? Emily spoke with a trembling voice. I love Carter, and I want to give birth to this child. Ashley smirked and interrupted. Seriously, wake up and look at reality. You really think my brother is going to marry an unemployed loser? The father-in-law, William, spoke with a heavy tone. Listen, young lady. Our Carter has a bright future ahead of him. He cannot afford to have you dragging him down right now. Holding back tears, Emily replied. I will work hard too. I'm going to pass the bar and become a lawyer. Barbara slammed her hand on the glass table, planning to. But right now, you are nothing but a parasite. Emily could no longer endure the insults. I am not a parasite. I am studying very hard. Barbara jumped up from her seat. Studying? What is so great about that? Our Carter is already a federal prosecutor. Emily stood up as well. So what? Does being a prosecutor mean everything? Does it give you the right to treat people like garbage? Barbara's face twisted with rage. What did you say? Are you talking back to me? And then, it happened. Barbara raised her hand and viciously slapped Emily across the face. Smack. With a loud crack, Emily's head whipped to the side. She grabbed her burning cheek, frozen in place. Barbara screamed at the top of her lungs. How dare you try to block my son's future? Who do you think you are, trying to trap a federal attorney? Emily's voice shook violently. I never tried to trap him. Shut your mouth, you cheap gold digger. Ashley joined in. Yeah, everyone knows you got knocked up on purpose. Tears spilling down her face, Emily shook her head. No, that is not true. Barbara shoved the document back toward her. Sign it right now, or you are not leaving this apartment. Emily stared at the papers, her hands trembling. But she stubbornly shook her head. I will not. I am keeping this baby. Barbara raised her hand again. Instinctively, Emily wrapped her arms around her stomach and backed away. Seeing this, Barbara grew even more enraged. What? Are you dodging me? William finally stepped in to stop his wife. Honey, calm down. What if the neighbors hear? Barbara roughly shook off his hand. Mind your own business. This piece of trash is trying to ruin our son's life. With her face completely covered in tears, Emily spoke. I love Carter, and I love this baby too, Barbara sneered. Love. People like you always use that word when you want a payout. Emily could not take another second of this. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Barbara shouted from behind her. Where do you think you are going? Do you know what happens if you walk out without signing that? Emily did not look back. Just as she grabbed the door handle, Barbara delivered her final threat. Fine. Brace yourself. I will make sure you never have a future in this city. A chill ran down Emily's spine at those words. But she did not turn around. She walked straight out of the penthouse. Alone in the elevator, Emily broke down. She looked at her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her cheek was swollen and bright red, and her eyes were severely puffy. Gently stroking her stomach, she whispered, I am sorry. Mommy will protect you. On the drive back, Emily called Carter. After a long wait, he finally answered. Yeah, Emily, Carter, your mother hit me. Dead silence fell over the line. What? My mom hit you? She slapped you? Carter stammered in a panic. I mean, my mom is just a little angry right now. I am sorry. Emily let out a hollow laugh. You are sorry. Is that all you have to say? Emily, just endure it a little longer. I will convince her. How much longer am I supposed to endure? Carter had no answer. Emily hung up the phone. She realized then that there was absolutely no one she could lean on. Arriving home, Emily looked in the hallway mirror. The red handprint on her cheek was glaringly obvious. Just then, the front door opened, and her father walked in. Emily, did you eat dinner? Robert stopped dead in his tracks, the second he saw his daughter's face. The handprint, the swollen eyes. His expression hardened into stone. Who hit you? It was the commanding tone of a judge. Emily turned her head away. It is nothing. Robert grabbed his daughter's shoulders and forced her to look at him. Who hit you? Emily could not hide it anymore. Carter's mother, my future mother-in-law. Robert's eyes turned to absolute zero. Yet his voice was eerily quiet. Emily, I held back because you asked me to. He gently reached out and touched his daughter's bruised cheek. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. But no one lays a hand on my daughter. I will not let this go anymore. Emily looked into her father's eyes. Inside them was something completely different from the warm father she knew. Something cold, unyielding, and utterly terrifying. Robert calmly pulled out his cell phone. He dialed a number. It is me. I need a favor. His voice was perfectly level, but within it lay a monstrous determination. That night, Emily did not come out of her room. Robert stood outside her door for a long time, listening to the muffled sounds of her crying. He knocked softly. "Emily? Can Dad come in?" There was no answer, but he opened the door and walked in. Emily was curled up on her bed, weeping. Robert sat quietly beside her. "It hurts a lot, does it not?" Emily nodded. "Dad, what did I do wrong?" Robert stroked her hair. "You did nothing wrong." Through her tears, Emily whispered, "I just loved Carter." Robert asked carefully, "Emily, what exactly has Carter ever done for you?" Emily froze. "When he was studying for the bar exam, you took care of everything for him, did you not? His meals, his chores, his prep books." Emily lowered her head. It was true. When Carter was preparing for his exams, Emily had put her own life on hold to support him. She bought his study materials with her part-time job money and made sure he ate. The memory broke Robert's heart. "Emily, let me ask you this. Do you really want to marry that man?" She hesitated for a long time before replying, "I just need this baby." "That is not an answer." Robert's tone was gentle but firm. Emily burst into tears again. Robert pulled her into a tight hug. "It is going to be all right. Whatever you decide, Dad will protect you." Emily cried in her father's arms until she finally fell asleep. Once he was sure she was resting, Robert quietly left the room. When he stepped into the living room, Robert's face had completely transformed. The warm, comforting father was gone, replaced by a ruthless, calculating man of the law. He walked into his home office and booted up his computer. William's corporate records, Barbara's financial portfolios, Carter's Department of Justice appointment files. Everything flashed onto his monitors. Robert's eyes gleamed with a frigid light. He picked up the phone. "Director Thomas. It is Robert Vance. I have some urgent financial discrepancies that require an immediate, comprehensive IRS audit." Hanging up, he dialed another number. "This is Robert Vance. I have substantial evidence of illegal offshore investments that the Securities and Exchange Commission needs to look at immediately." Finally, he made one last call. "Office of Professional Responsibility at the DOJ? I need to file a formal complaint regarding a prosecutor's ethical violations." His voice remained calm, but it carried an overwhelming, terrifying power. The next morning, Emily walked into the living room with a swollen face. Robert was cooking breakfast. "Are you awake? Come eat." Emily noticed her father's eyes looked different today. There was something hard and cold behind them. Robert got ready for work. "Dad has to go to the courthouse. You stay home and rest today." "Okay, Dad." As he walked out the door, Robert looked back one last time. "Do not worry about a thing, Emily. Dad will fix everything." When Robert Vance arrived at the federal courthouse, several thick files were already resting on his massive mahogany desk. A formal IRS audit request for Williams Corporation. An SEC investigation report on Barbara's suspected Ponzi scheme involvement. A DOJ ethics investigation request regarding Carter's family corruption. Robert reviewed each document meticulously before firmly stamping his signature of approval on all of them. It begins. At that exact moment, a swarm of federal agents stormed into Williams' corporate headquarters. "Internal Revenue Service. We are conducting a full-scale audit. Step away from your computers." William was completely blindsided. An IRS audit? Out of nowhere? Why? At the same time, Barbara received a call from the Securities and Exchange Commission. "Ma'am, we are calling to verify several highly suspicious transactions in your investment accounts." Barbara felt a spike of panic. "My accounts? Why?" "We have detected evidence of illegal securities fraud and insider trading." And over at the federal prosecutor's office, Carter received an urgent summons. It was from the DOJ's Office of Professional Responsibility. "We are requesting your immediate cooperation regarding an internal ethics investigation concerning your immediate family's financial activities." Carter broke out in a cold sweat. "My family's activities?" Hanging up the phone, Carter buried his face in his hands. He grabbed his phone with trembling fingers and called his mother. "Mom, what is going on? I heard Dad's company is getting raided by the IRS." Barbara was in full panic mode. "I do not know either. And the SEC just called saying they are investigating my bank accounts." Carter was terrified. "Mom, did you do something illegal?" Barbara could not answer. The truth was, She had been heavily involved in illegal offshore investments and a high-yield Ponzi scheme. Carter felt absolute despair. If all this comes to light, my career as a prosecutor is over. Right then, a single person flashed through his mind. Emily, and Emily's father. It could not be. Shaking uncontrollably, Carter called Emily. Emily, by any chance, what exactly does your father do at the courthouse? Emily went quiet for a moment. Why are you asking me that now? No, I am just curious. Emily answered coldly. I told you he works at the federal courthouse. Is that not all you need to know? Then, she hung up. Clutching his phone, Carter was drenched in cold sweat. He knew something massive was happening, but he could not grasp exactly what it was. That evening, Robert came home and had dinner with his daughter. While eating, Emily mentioned, Dad, Carter called me today. He asked exactly what you do for a living. Robert replied calmly. And so? I just told him you work at the courthouse. Robert nodded. Good job. Emily looked at her father closely. Dad, did you do something? Robert smiled warmly. What could I possibly do? I am just doing my job. But deep within his eyes, that cold, impenetrable resolve remained. The people who had slapped his daughter had no idea that this was only the beginning. A week passed. The nightmare for Carter's family only escalated. William sat in his CEO office, tearing his hair out. The documents the IRS seized contained far too many things he had tried to bury. Corporate tax evasion, massive embezzlement, illegal slush funds. Everything was bleeding into the light. How is this happening all at once? With shaking hands, William lit a cigar. The IRS audit grew more aggressive by the day. Their corporate partners started getting calls. Please submit all transaction records with Williams Corporation. One by one, their partners cut ties. We are sorry, but we have to suspend our contracts. We cannot risk the IRS auditing us too. Williams' company began to collapse rapidly. Barbara's situation was just as dire. The SEC relentlessly hounded her. Ma'am, care to explain this wire transfer? Where did this massive influx of cash originate? Barbara dripped with nervous sweat. Years ago, she had eagerly dumped money into a guaranteed high-yield investment introduced by a wealthy socialite. It turned out to be a massive Ponzi scheme, and she had recruited others into it to get her payout. I did not know anything about it. You did not know? Then, where did these millions of dollars come from? Barbara had no defense. Things only got worse. The scandal hit the local news. Newly appointed federal prosecutor's family implicated in massive investment fraud and tax evasion. At the U.S. Attorney's Office, Carter could no longer bear the stares of his colleagues. Every time he walked down the hall, he heard the whispers. I hear his family is a complete criminal syndicate. The DOJ is going to roast him alive. Carter kept his head down and slunk into his office. Then, OPR called again. Asa Carter, you received the summons, correct? Yes. Yes, I saw it. Report to the Ethics Committee room tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Hanging up, Carter collapsed onto his desk. The prestigious prosecutor career he had dreamed of, the one he had barely just started, was crumbling to dust. With shaking fingers, he texted Emily. Emily, can we meet? A long time later, she replied. Why? I just want to talk. I am busy. Next time. He was shut down completely. Carter dropped his phone. And then, it finally dawned on him. None of this was a coincidence. Someone was systematically and intentionally slaughtering his family. But who? And how? He tore at his hair in frustration. That night, the entire family gathered at Barbara's penthouse. The atmosphere in the living room was apocalyptic. William spoke first. At this rate, the company is going bankrupt. All our vendors have cut us off, Barbara sobbed. All my bank accounts have been frozen by the feds. What on earth is happening? Ashley looked terrified. Carter, is your job safe at least? Carter shook his head. I have a disciplinary hearing tomorrow. They are investigating me for aiding and abetting family corruption. Barbara shrieked. Aiding and abetting? You did not even know anything about it. It does not matter. The fact that I am family is enough to ruin me. Silence suffocated the room. William asked cautiously, Do you think someone is doing this to us on purpose? Carter agreed. I have the same feeling. The timing is too precise. Barbara snapped. Who? Who could possibly have the power to do this to us? Carter thought of one person. Emily. No, Emily's father. Could it be? Emily's dad? Barbara barked a harsh laugh. Do not be ridiculous. He is a glorified paper pusher at the courthouse. What could a clerk possibly do? But Carter could not shake the dread. Mom, do you know exactly what his title is? Barbara waved her hand dismissively. She just said he works at the court. He is a civil servant, William chimed in. Still, we should verify it, just in case. Carter nodded. I will make some calls. That night, Carter called a senior prosecutor who had deep connections with federal court administration. Hey, do me a huge favor. What is it? Can you look up a guy named Robert Vance in the federal court system for me? Robert Vance? Hang on. The sound of a keyboard clacking echoed over the phone. Then, a dead, chilling silence. Hey, what exactly is your relationship with this man? Carter's heart plummeted to his stomach. Why? Who is he? The senior prosecutor's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. Carter, this man is a chief judge for the United States Court of Appeals. He sits on the First Circuit. Carter nearly dropped his phone. What? He is a federal appellate judge. He is an absolute titan in the legal world. He has friends in the Supreme Court, the DOJ, everywhere. Did you cross him? Carter was soaked in cold sweat. No, I did not. Hanging up, Carter's legs gave out and he collapsed onto the floor. A federal appellate judge, the First Circuit Court of Appeals, Emily's father. It was impossible. His entire body shook violently. He understood why Emily had hid her father's true status, and he understood exactly whose hand was orchestrating the absolute destruction of his family. With fingers trembling so badly he could barely type, Carter called his mother. Mom, I checked. And? What did you find out, Mom? Emily's dad. He is a federal judge, a chief appellate judge. Over the phone, there was a loud crash. Barbara had dropped her phone. A long time passed before her shaking voice returned. W.A. What did you say? A federal judge? He is one of the most powerful men in the justice system. Barbara was utterly paralyzed. Now, everything made terrifying sense. The IRS audit, the SEC freezing her accounts, the DOJ Ethics Committee. It was all executed by a single man's silent command. Barbara collapsed onto the hardwood floor, clutching her phone. Who on earth did we mess with? She finally realized the magnitude of the monster she had awakened. The woman she had slapped in the face was the precious daughter of a man who commanded the federal justice system, and they had been unimaginably foolish. The next morning, Barbara had not slept a wink. The words federal judge echoed endlessly in her skull. The father of the girl she physically assaulted was a judge with the power to ruin lives with a stroke of a pen. She looked in the mirror at her pale, sickly face. How could this happen? Then, her husband called. Barbara, we are done. What happened? The IRS just finalized the tax evasion charges. They are forwarding the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Barbara dropped to her knees. Criminal prosecution. That meant federal prison. No, this cannot be happening. William's voice was completely broken. The company is dead. We are entirely finished. The call disconnected. Barbara sat vacantly before turning on the TV. The local news was broadcasting. Federal prosecutor's family indicted on massive fraud and tax charges. Warrants issued. A picture of William's corporate building flashed on screen. Barbara threw the remote control. What is happening to us? Right then, Ashley walked through the front door, sobbing hysterically. Mom, I just got fired. What? They told me our family is too toxic and is bringing bad press to the firm. They told me to pack my desk. Ashley fell into her mother's arms, bawling. Barbara could not even hug her daughter back. She was entirely broken herself. That afternoon, Carter returned home. His face was the color of chalk. Carter fell onto the sofa. Mom, they suspended me. Barbara's eyes went wide. Suspended? From what? Pending the ethics investigation. I have been stripped of my badge and gun. I am on indefinite unpaid leave. Carter's voice shook violently. I might lose my law license entirely. Barbara clutched her head. No. Carter buried his face in his hands. This is all Emily's father's doing. Barbara gritted her teeth. That man, he did this to our family? Carter nodded. A federal appellate judge can do this in his sleep. His network covers the entire legal and financial sectors. Barbara shook with pure terror and desperation. I have to go beg for forgiveness. I have to apologize. Carter tried to stop her. Mom, do you really think that will work? It is already way too late. Barbara shoved his hands away. I cannot just sit here and die. I have to go beg for mercy. That evening, Barbara found Emily's home address. It was a beautiful, understated house in a quiet, affluent suburb that Carter had visited once before. Barbara took a cab and rushed over. Standing at the front door, she pressed the doorbell with trembling fingers. The door opened, and Emily appeared. The moment she saw Barbara, Emily's face turned to stone. Why are you here? Barbara immediately dropped to her knees on the porch, sobbing uncontrollably. Emily, please. Please forgive me. Emily looked down at her with absolute ice in her eyes. What do you think you are doing? I was wrong. I was out of my mind. Please, just talk to your father for us. Emily scoffed. My father? You mean the lowly courthouse clerk? Barbara shook her head frantically. No, no. The Honorable Judge Vance. Please, I am begging you. Emily crossed her arms. So you finally figured it out. Too late. Barbara wept, burying her face in her hands. Please, please, just spare Carter's career. He is a prosecutor. Emily's voice was razor sharp. Carter's career? Why should I care about that? Emily, he is the man you loved. Emily laughed. The man I loved? Where was he when you were slapping the life out of me? He was too busy staring at the floor, terrified of his mommy. Barbara had no words. Emily kept going. You called me a cheap gold digger, did you not? You told me to get rid of my baby. And then you struck me across the face. Barbara wept loudly. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Emily shook her head. Sorry does not fix anything. Just then, Robert stepped out from the living room. Emily, who is at the door? The moment Barbara saw Robert Vance, her blood ran cold. The piercing, unyielding eyes, the absolute aura of authority that only a veteran judge possessed. Robert looked down at Barbara. Stand up. It was a command. Barbara stood up on shaking legs. Your Honor, please. Robert spoke with lethal calm. What exactly did you come here to ask of me? Please, just spare my family. Just let Carter keep his job. Robert let out a dark chuckle. His job? A prosecutor who turns a blind eye to his own family's massive criminal enterprise? What kind of prosecutor is that? Barbara could not utter a single syllable. Robert continued. You committed securities fraud, and your husband committed tax evasion and embezzlement. Do you honestly believe a family like that has any right to uphold the law? Barbara lowered her head in shame. Robert's voice dropped another octave, becoming pure ice. Slapping my daughter was a personal offense. A personal grudge can be resolved with an apology. Barbara looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But Robert crushed it instantly. But breaking federal law? Prosecuting that is my duty. Barbara dropped back to her knees. Please, I am begging you. Have mercy. Robert did not flinch. Go home. The legal process will continue as mandated. Barbara sobbed on the porch, but Robert simply turned his back and walked inside. Emily followed him, shutting the heavy wooden door firmly behind her. Barbara was left alone. She cried for a long time, before stumbling back to her feet. Riding the train back to the city, she looked at her reflection in the window. She looked utterly pathetic and destroyed. When Barbara returned to the penthouse, she looked at her family. It is over. Nothing is going to work. Carter rushed to her. Mom, what happened? Barbara shook her head. We are finished. It is all over. William buried his face in his hands in despair. So we are really going to lose everything? Barbara just cried instead of answering. The luxurious penthouse was filled with the stench of ruin. The once mighty family was collapsing into dust. And the catalyst for all of it was the day they chose to degrade, assault, and throw out a pregnant young woman. A few days later, the doorbell at Barbara's penthouse rang. Barbara was completely exhausted. Debt collectors had been calling day and night, and her husband was spending his days in federal interrogation rooms. Annoyed, she opened the door. And then, she froze entirely. Emily stood in the hallway, and right behind her stood Robert Vance, dressed in a sharp tailored suit, his federal pin gleaming on his lapel. Barbara could not breathe. Your Honor. Robert spoke coldly. May we come in? Barbara wordlessly stepped aside. In the living room, William, Ashley, and Carter were sitting in silence. When Robert entered, all three of their faces drained of blood. Carter leaped to his feet. "Your Honor." Robert sat down on the leather sofa. "Sit." It was not a request. Everyone sat down, trembling with tension. Robert opened his briefcase and calmly began to speak. "I suppose a formal introduction is in order. I am Robert Vance, Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals." William could not even lift his head. Robert continued. "I was informed that my daughter was physically assaulted in this very room." Barbara spoke with a terrified, quivering voice. I just lost my temper in the heat of the moment." "Lost your temper?" Robert's voice slashed through the air like a blade. "Does getting angry give you the right to assault another human being?" Barbara had no answer. Robert pulled out several files and tossed them onto the glass coffee table. "Do you know what these are?" William cautiously glanced at the documents. His face turned paper white. "Those are the audited ledgers of your corporate tax evasion. 3 years, totaling $5 million. William was struck dumb. Robert tossed down another file. "This is a record of your wife's illegal wire transfers. There are over 10 victims in your little Ponzi scheme." Barbara's hands shook violently. Robert slid the final file directly in front of Carter. "And this is the Office of Professional Responsibility report regarding Assistant U.S. Attorney Carter's willful blindness to his family's criminal syndicate." Carter could not even look at the file. He just stared at the floor. Robert spoke with terrifying composure. "I am a judge. I am a man who handles the law." His voice was quiet, but its weight was crushing. "As I told you, striking my daughter was a personal matter. Personal matters can be forgiven with apologies." Hope flashed in Barbara's eyes again, but Robert's next words shattered it completely. "However, breaking the law, enforcing the law, is my job." Dead silence filled the living room. Robert locked eyes with Barbara. "Ma'am, when you struck my daughter, what exactly did you say to her?" Barbara's lips quivered. "I believe you told my daughter you wanted to show her what real power looks like." Robert offered a cold, predatory smile. "So, I came here personally to show you exactly what a real difference in power looks like." Barbara collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. "I am so sorry. Please forgive us." Robert stood up. "The law does not forgive, it enforces." William slumped forward, completely broken. "Your Honor, please, have mercy on our family." Robert shook his head. "My daughter is a precious member of my family. You should have thought of that before you assaulted and degraded her." Ashley wept and begged. "Your Honor, I did not know anything about the crimes." Robert looked at Ashley. "You knew nothing? You certainly knew enough to mock and belittle my daughter, did you not?" Ashley hung her head in shame. Finally, Robert turned his gaze to Carter. "AUSA Carter." Carter answered with a broken voice. "Yes, Your Honor. What is the duty of a prosecutor? To uphold the law. Then what about the crimes committed by your own flesh and blood? Should those not be prosecuted as well?" Carter could not answer. Robert's voice was laced with disgust. A man who cannot even protect the mother of his child because he is terrified of his own mother. "What kind of prosecutor is that?" Carter openly wept. "I am sorry." Robert turned his back to them. "The legal proceedings will move forward without delay. The IRS will handle the tax evasion. The SEC will handle the wire fraud. And the DOJ will handle you." Barbara wailed in agony. "No. Please. Please." But Robert did not look back. He guided Emily to the door. Just before opening it, he paused and delivered one final statement. Everyone looked at him in terror. "For the record, I have served on the federal bench for over 20 years. My classmates, my former clerks, and my colleagues are currently sitting in the Supreme Court, the Department of Justice, and the highest law firms in this country." Robert's eyes glinted with absolute menace. "When you touched my daughter, you declared war on the entire federal justice system." At those words, the family entirely collapsed. Robert took Emily's hand and walked out. As the door clicked shut, only the sounds of hysterical wailing remained in the penthouse. Barbara pounded the floor and sobbed. William gripped his hair in despair. Ashley sat paralyzed, crying. Carter just sat there, empty and ruined. Everything was over. The company was bankrupt, their assets were frozen, and Carter's career was dead. And all of it was the direct result of their own choice to assault and discard a young woman. Barbara screamed at the ceiling. Who did we mess with? But it was too late. The difference in power. They finally understood what those words meant. down to their very bones. In the elevator, Emily looked up at her father. "Dad, are you okay?" Robert smiled warmly. "Yes, I am perfectly fine." Emily squeezed his arm. "Thank you, Dad." Robert stroked her hair. "As long as you are happy, Dad is happy." As they got into the car, Emily asked, "Is it really all over?" Robert nodded. "Yes, the law will take care of the rest." Emily looked out the window. Her heart was a mess of complicated emotions. The man she once loved. The man who failed to protect her. Now, she was entirely done with him. Robert held her hand. "Emily, let us walk our own path now." Emily nodded firmly. "Yes, Dad." The car drove quietly back to their home. Behind them lay a ruined family, and ahead of Emily lay a brand new beginning. 3 months passed. The federal sentences were handed down. William was convicted of corporate fraud and tax evasion, receiving a 3-year sentence in federal prison with 5 years of supervised release. The corporation was liquidated, and their assets were seized by the government. Barbara was found guilty of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She avoided prison time but was hit with massive fines and forced to pay restitution to the victims, completely bankrupting her. The luxury penthouse was foreclosed on. The remaining family moved into a cramped, run-down apartment on the outskirts of the city. Barbara sat vacantly in the tiny living room. Her designer clothes had all been pawned off, and she wore a cheap, faded tracksuit. Ashley tried to find a job, but no firm would hire her. "Because of Carter, our family's name is radioactive. Everyone rejects my resume." Ashley ended up working the night shift at a local convenience store. William was locked away in a federal penitentiary. And Carter. The DOJ Ethics Committee could not definitively prove he had active knowledge of the crimes. However, he was found guilty of gross negligence and conduct unbecoming of a federal officer. He was slapped with a 6-month unpaid suspension. He technically kept his law license, but his reputation in the legal world was utterly annihilated. That is the guy whose family ran a crime ring. I heard they messed with a chief appellate judge's daughter and got wiped off the map. Every time Carter walked the halls, he had to endure the brutal whispers. He had lost all his previous arrogance. Now, he kept his head down, avoided eye contact, and lived like a ghost. One late night, Carter drank himself into a stupor and called Emily. After a long time, she finally picked up. "What is it?" Her voice was cold and indifferent. "Emily." "It is me," Carter slurred his words. "I am sorry." "I am so sorry." Emily sighed heavily. "Are we really doing this again? Emily, can we please start over? I will do better. I swear to God I will do better." Emily spoke with absolute finality. "Carter, I am completely over you. Stop calling me Emily, please. I have no desire to spend my life with a coward who hides behind his mother." And with that, she ended the call. Carter dropped his phone and sobbed into his hands. It was only now, far too late, that he realized exactly what he had lost, and exactly how pathetic he was. But it was too late. Meanwhile, Emily's life had completely transformed. 3 months ago, she received her acceptance letter to a top-tier law school in Boston. The day the letter arrived, Robert hugged her tightly. "I am so proud of you, Emily. Thank you, Dad." Emily enrolled in law school and poured her soul into her studies. The baby inside her was growing healthy and strong. She was now 7 months pregnant. Her belly was large, but her face was radiant. Her law school peers were incredibly supportive. "Emily, if you need to rest, tell us. We will share our lecture notes." "Thank you, but I can handle it," Emily answered with a bright smile. She was no longer a woman who needed to rely on anyone. She was walking her own path on her own 2 feet. One weekend, Emily and her father were decorating the nursery. As Robert assembled the crib, he asked, "Are you happy, Emily?" She nodded without hesitation. "Yes, Dad, I am truly happy." Robert smiled softly. "Good. If you are happy, that is all I need." Emily rubbed her belly. "I hope this baby grows up to be a wonderful person like you, Dad." Robert patted her shoulder. "You are already going to be an incredible mother." That evening, Emily looked out the window and reflected. Her relationship with Carter, the abuse from his family, the agonizing heartbreak. But all of that pain had only forged her into a stronger woman. She could stand tall on her own. Give birth, graduate law school, and pass the bar exam. That was her new mission. A few months later, Emily gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. Holding his granddaughter, Robert shed tears of joy. Grandpa will always protect you. Emily laughed. Thank you, Dad, for always being my shield when I was at my lowest. Robert held his daughter's hand. Emily. True revenge is not about destroying your enemies. Emily looked at him. Then what is it? Robert smiled warmly. It is about becoming a much better person than they could ever hope to be. Emily nodded. Yes, I believe that too. A year later, Emily graduated from law school and passed the Massachusetts bar exam on her first try. The day the results were posted, Emily held her daughter and cheered. Mommy did it. Robert clapped proudly beside them. You did amazing, sweetheart. Emily decided to become an attorney specializing in domestic abuse and family law. She wanted to be the shield for women who were trapped in the same nightmare she had survived. On the day she took her first case, her client was a pregnant woman. She was being verbally abused by her in-laws and completely abandoned by her husband. Looking at the terrified woman, Emily saw her past self. Do not worry. I am going to protect you. Emily held the woman's hands tightly. She fought relentlessly in court and won the case. Thanks to Emily, the woman was legally and financially freed from her abusers. Thank you so much, counselor, the woman cried, bowing in gratitude. Emily smiled warmly. It is okay. I know exactly what it feels like. That night, Emily came home and hugged her daughter tight. Mommy did a really good thing today. Her daughter giggled brightly. Robert watched them from the doorway, beaming. My Emily grew up to be quite the formidable lawyer. It is all thanks to you, Dad. Robert shook his head. No. You did this all by yourself. Emily looked out the window. Spring had arrived. The flowers were blooming, and the birds were singing. Emily's life was the exact same. She had endured a brutal winter, and now, a warm, beautiful spring had finally come, and it was a spring she had built with her own two hands. Carter was still rotting away in a cramped, miserable apartment with his broken family. But Emily was living in a beautiful home, surrounded by love, with her father and her daughter. Anyone could see who the true victor was. Holding her baby close, Emily whispered softly, My sweet girl, grow up to be strong like Mommy. Become someone that no one can ever look down on. The baby smiled up at her. Emily smiled back. She had absolutely nothing to fear anymore. She had her father, she had her daughter, and above all else, she had herself.